this place is unique. And I think there's a couple people that say it, Frank Sinatra or Johnny Drama from Entourage. And it's like, if you can ski Hunter, you can ski anywhere.
Welcome to the Storm. I'm your host, Stuart Winchester. You know what the first New York mountain was that I skied when I moved to NYC 23 years ago? Of course you do. It was Hunter Mountain. There was no way around it. It is a 1,600 vertical foot magnet sticking out of the Catskills just over 2 hours from the city, and it beckons to every skier in the metro area. Hunter is frantic, wild, dizzying, and completely amazing. There is nothing else quite like Hunter Mountain, and I am so fired up to finally feature this New York ski legend on the Storm Skiing Podcast. First, listening to the podcast is cool. It's what most of you are doing right now. You can do it in your car or when you're pretty much doing anything else. But if you want another layer to the podcast, you can now watch the Storm Skiing Podcast on YouTube or stormskiing.com. We've got an incredible editor who has basically turned the Storm into a little TV show with some cool little extra visuals that will give added depth to our conversations. So please hop over to YouTube and give me a follow at Storm Ski Journal. Or you can watch on stormskiing.com or via the Substack app at the Storm Skiing Journal and Podcast. And if you really like the Storm, you can rep the brand by swinging into the Storm store at stormskiing.myshopify.com, where you can pick up a hat, hoodie, shirt, sticker, or a whole bunch of other swag to rep the brand. You can follow the Storm on X or Instagram at Storm Ski Journal, same handle as YouTube. But of course, the very best way to support the Storm's mission of independent ski journalism is to upgrade to the paid tier of the Storm Skiing Journal and Podcast. That will get you access to 100% of the Storm's written content, past, present, and future. And as I've said many times, the Storm Skiing newsletter is the heart of this whole operation. All right, let's get into it. Episode 204 of the Storm Skiing Podcast. Trent Poole, Vice President and General Manager of Hunter Mountain, New York. My guest today has been General Manager of Hunter Mountain, New York since 2023. Hunter Mountain features 1,600 vertical feet on 320 skiable acres, served by 13 lifts, including 3 six-packs, which accounts for more than half of such lifts in New York State. Hunter is one of 42 ski areas owned and operated by Vail Resorts. He has worked at Vail Resorts for 2 decades, leading finance at Keystone and Breckenridge, and acting as GM at Mad River, Ohio, and Jack Frost, Big Boulder, Pennsylvania, prior to taking the top job at Hunter. Trent Poole is my guest. Trent, a long overdue welcome to the Storm. So glad to finally talk some Hunter Mountain here. How you doing today, Trent?
I'm doing great, Stuart. And yeah, thanks for having me. I'm a huge fan of the podcast and yeah, looking forward to the discussion.
Well, I'm a huge fan of Hunter Mountain. It is the first place I went when I moved to New York City over 2 decades ago, because coming from the Midwest, as you did as well, I couldn't believe that I had a 1,600 vertical foot mountain within 2 hours of where I lived. I don't know if I was quite ready for what Hunter Mountain is. It is a very unique, rather glorious and chaotic place in all the right ways. 65 years. I love the hat you're rocking, Trent. Tell us about the 65th year at Hunter Mountain and how it's going so far.
Yeah, Stuart. I'm glad you mentioned the uniqueness of Hunter Mountain, because it's really like a place unlike any other. And you know, looking at the terrain and how the mountain's built, it's certainly it brings challenges. It's a good place to learn. And yeah, thinking about our 65th anniversary season, we're always like huge historians here and love to honor the past. And yeah, 65 years young, and put some new investments out there. I know we'll talk about a little bit later for, I guess, a birthday present to ourselves and to our guests. Yeah, but it's been an awesome season filled with activations and, just honoring like all different generations. Some folks have come back that have been gone for a while. And yeah, it's been a great vibe here this year.
So, Trent, you mentioned before we came on air here that it's a little warm up there today. It's a little warm down here in the city as well, but we've had a pretty good winter in the Northeast overall. How's business been? How's the skiing been compared to your first season last season at Hunter Mountain? Are you pretty happy overall with how things have been going?
I'm super stoked about how things went this year. Last year we had some challenging weather and a lot of like warm ups and then cool downs, and so we made snow and then refreshed and refreshed. Like when winter hit this year, it got cold and it got really cold and it stayed consistent. So we were able to build our snowpack, and we're known as the snowmaking capital of the world here at Hunter, and our snowmakers, they take that personally, and they went out there and they crushed it. They blew a ton of snow, and then the rest of the mountain operations teams pushed it out. Patrollers, took care of business, and we're opening trails we haven't opened in a while, and it's been awesome on that front.
So Hunter's been legendary for snowmaking for decades, and I believe there's always a lot of counterclaims to first snowmaking, this or that, but the first or among the first ski areas in the United States to be 100% covered in snowmaking, which I think occurred somewhere in the early 1980s. But you're always improving, always trying to build out that plant. And you mentioned your snowmaker, so let's start there with your snowmaking upgrades that you made last summer. You and I talked about these when I was out there last summer visiting, and there's always that optimism, right? Before the snow flies, that it'll work out how you wanted. Tell us, just remind us for those who aren't aware of where those snowmaking upgrades were, what you hope to achieve with them, and how, in fact, that worked out and played out through the season.
Yeah. So going into the season, or even in the off season, I'll start with the Belt Parkway, which is a critical artery here at Hunter Mountain. It's a 2.2 mile long intermediate trail from top to bottom. So we felt that was critical for us to put some snowmaking automation down, and the guns can kind of step up and step down depending on what the temperatures look like and the humidity, and just being able to do that kind of put some of our weaker areas on that trail, and they were now strengths. So we were super excited about that trail. The next trail that we worked on was Way Out. And Way Out is kind of like the gateway between the main mountain, Hunter North, and then Hunter West. I think the snowmaking automation helped there the most with our ability to refresh and get there for a night here and there after we blew the snow initially. And that's a huge unlock for us. So you can ski a bunch of trails off Hunter North from that trail, and then you can get to the Zephyr Express and then over to Hunter West for the expert skiers. And then last, but certainly not least, is Claire's Way. And Claire's Way is an iconic trail amongst not just our locals, but I think it's got a little bit of like lore or folklore behind it. And people love that trail. And I know you and I got a chance to ski it over the holidays. And our goal was to open Claire's Way during the holidays. And that had not happened in the previous at least 5 years. So when we had the opportunity, we fired up that automated system. The snowmakers did their thing. The automation did its thing. And next thing you know, you and I are ripping it up over the holidays on some nice and new terrain.
One of the, or two of the trails, I guess, that I hear about the most are Westway and Annapurna. And I'm sure you hear about them as well. And I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But part of the reason I started the Storm, Trent, is that there's just a lot of jabbering online and a lot of certainty among various folks about snowmaking and this or that, or why things are the way they are. But can you tell us what is the situation with snowmaking on Westway and Annapurna, sort of historically now, and what are the future plans? Because those two trails seem to be inconsistently open during some seasons, and there's a lot of debate out there about why that is.
I mean, I'll start with Annapurna. That trail, and then really all the trails on Hunter West, they've got a lot of pitch to them, and that is an older pipeline. That's an older set of snow guns over there, and hadn't really been charged in a long time. We were testing it to see if we ever got to this point, could we execute and open that trail? And then ultimately it just didn't work out. And I think it's something that we're focused on and going to take a look at in the off season. But, I don't think we're that far off from Annapurna. Westway is kind of a different animal. That's a very, very wide trail. It's a super windy area of the mountain. It's incredibly difficult to make snow there. And it's kind of like old school technology over there as well. So, some of the things that we're doing to maybe reimagine what that experience looks like, we're letting some of the trail grow to kind of narrow the trail and see if we can't remove like wind from the equation. Obviously, we've been looking at technology and nothing like in the immediate future. But I think what we learned this year is that when we match technology with the expertise of the snowmakers, like we're in pretty good shape.
So exciting stuff with snowmaking, but really, what I want to talk about, which is those 2 new lifts that you put in this year, or 1.5 new lifts, or however you want to frame it. Tell us about these upgrades, Trent, and how happy you are with them so far.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, like we're beyond thrilled with how those lift projects went. And yeah, I'll start with Broadway Express. And that lift has been a game changer for us, especially if you're an intermediate and even really above skier, upgrading from a 4-passenger fixed grip with an exit that was kind of over this bridge. And, like I'm the GM of Hunter Mountain, and I can kind of get around on my snowboard, but like I would get up to the top of that thing and I'm like, okay, don't be the GM. Don't fall. Don't like it's embarrassment unlike any other, but like, so I get nervous getting to the top of that lift. And, I kind of empathize with our beginner and intermediate skiers and riders. And I'm like, I'm sure they feel the same way. So like the first thing I'd say about that lift is I'm super excited about the exit on that lift and how confidence building and easy it is to get off that lift. I think the other thing I would note about the Broadway Express is, now it's a 3.5 minute ride versus what we had before. And the amount of terrain that you're able to access now versus the old B or the previous Bs is, it's a good thing to have. So you have all the terrain that you used to be able to access off of Broadway. And now with the Express, you can access all that. And then, some of the trails on the front facing side of the mountain. So you don't have to go completely to the top to access trails like Eisenhower in Gun Hill. Mm-hmm. And, you can even hit lower Racer's Edge from the Broadway Express. So it really opened up our options over there.
I love the new unload, both for the reasons you mentioned, because it's a lot gentler and you just get off on basically a flat, but also you moved it up the mountain. It sort of unloads in a protected area and you kind of have a big yard. I don't really know how else to explain it, or a mid-mountain snow beach to chill. And as you mentioned, the old B, I mean, you would just get off and it's like, get out of there because someone's flying at you from some direction. But this, have you found that that's kind of a nice little gathering place or meeting place for people mid-mountain?
It is a good place to kind of get your bearings and say like, and where you want to go from there. Like you can go to F-lift and up to the top of the mountain if the flyer's on Windhold or anything like that.
So same kind of concept here that I asked you with the snowmaking, which is that, you just had 3 trails that you enhanced, but there was a ripple effect. And there's a ripple effect with this one lift on several different lifts. So the first and most obvious to me was the old B looked like it was an easy skate across to F, but it was kind of uphill and was a little awkward. And I usually would just give up and not do it. What's been the consequence for F lift? Has that allowed you to run F lift more? Has it made it more popular? Has it overwhelmed F lift maybe because it's just a triple and you're feeding off a 6-pack? How has that interchange worked out with those 2 lifts, with the new Broadway and the old F triple to the summit?
Yeah, that's a good question. What I would say about F lift first is that the folks that were riding, even before, you had beginners and intermediates riding Broadway, and then you also had some experts that wanted to get to F and make the great traverse as you speak of over to F and then up the hill. And then I would say that from a demographic standpoint, like you're still getting that same mix. It's just the experience is so much better for everybody. So now you're skiing down to F lift if you're an expert and that's your preferred route, or you're hitting those front facing trails in the main mountain. And, we ran F lift, I think a little bit more than we had last year. It's generally like a lift we run on higher volume days and weekends, holidays. But like I said, the experience was so much better. And actually like grabbing some fans of that lift from the flyer and easing some of the congestion over there for folks that wanted to ride the flyer, if only to ride, down Hellgate and then hit those lower trails. And now they had options. So, those are the things I think about. And, but yeah, the experience was certainly better there with that lift.
So talk about the impact on the flyer, because the flyer has always been the thing. I mean, when I first started skiing Hunter, it was a high speed 4. I forget off the top of my head what it was called. It was called Snowlight Express. And so everyone's always just gone right to the flyer or right to the Snowlight before that, because it's the summit lift, 1,600 vertical feet in one shot. It's a 6-pack. It's this big, shiny thing. Now you have 2 6-packs right next to each other, more or less. Has Broadway taken some pressure off the flyer?
100%. It has definitely taken some pressure off the flyer, and kind of like for the reasons I had said before, it gives our guests options. And, like you had said, like people go to the flyer and the flyer is the flyer, and being able to pivot off of that and into the Broadway, really made the experience better for both lifts. And that's kind of like what we were going for. And it's good to see things that you look at when you're penciling them, come to fruition.
Ski brands, outdoor brands, ski areas. Does your marketing need a fresh perspective from industry experts? Do you need better storytelling? Do you need rebranding or advertising? If so, I would like to introduce you to my friends at Bonfire Collective, a fractional marketing team that collaborates with ski areas and outdoor brands. Which means what exactly? What is it to be a, quote, fractional marketing team that collaborates with ski areas and outdoor brands? Well, what it means is that Bonfire can help you rethink your approach in ways that can turbocharge your business. Bonfire Collective, for example, took on the marketing at one New Hampshire ski area and doubled revenue in just 3 years. And when the Storm was ready to invest in our first ever digital marketing campaign last year, I worked with Bonfire to make it happen. I could not be happier with the results, and I think that you will love working with them as well. To get started, you will want to talk to Eric over at Bonfire Collective. Eric was a co-founder of Bluebird Backcountry in Colorado, the first human-powered ski area, and so he knows the ski business. Visit bonfirecollective.com or reach out to me. I'll be happy to make that connection with Eric and the team at Bonfire for you. All right, back to Hunter. So Trent, it's interesting because there's echoes here, and I do want to get to Hunter East in a moment, but there's echoes here of your last job at Jack Frost Big Boulder, where you oversaw in one season the installation of 5 new lifts, which I have to imagine was a tremendous project. But those 5 lifts replaced 8 lifts. And you basically took a lot of side-by-side lifts, old triples and doubles, and replaced them with new modern quads. And I realize these decisions are likely made at a very high level, but they probably take a lot of input from the local resorts as well. Having been a part of this a couple of times now with Jack Frost Big Boulder and Vail's remaking and reimagining of the lift system there, and now the reimagining of the lift system at Hunter, can you talk a little bit about that process and those conversations that happen between Broomfield and I've heard you have some sort of lift gurus over there at Vail and the local folks on the ground and the people who have been at these mountains for a long time, and how you come to these final plans and sort of, is there an overall kind of fleet goal to reduce the number of lifts over time?
Yeah, I would honestly think about it a slightly different way. It's like we go into every one of these, decisions is like, what is the current state of the lift, and like how is the resort flowing, and ultimately, it's the genesis of what these ideas are for the lifts are coming from the resorts. Like the people in the boots on the ground, they see it every day, and they're able to provide input and like an idea and a perspective. And then when we start to get into the, lift and construction support teams, they help us round out the idea. But I do want to be clear that, like the Broadway Express, the Otis lift, even some of those lifts at Jack Frost and Big Boulder, like that was an idea that came from the local teams. And those double doubles or triple triples, it's really two lifts for one, but that's two lift crews. That's, double the things that can happen to the lifts. And what I think what I'm learning, and this is my own opinion, is like, if you have higher capacity on your lifts, like maybe you don't need some of those double doubles. And what we saw at Jack Frost and at Hunter is that like when you're able to upgrade the technology and have and maintain a lot of the capacity, you're in a much better place when it comes to the guest experience. And I think that held true with the 5 lifts we built at Jack Frost Big Boulder. Like I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out Carl Skyling and the Skytrack team that like we built 5 lifts in 5 months there. I don't think anybody's ever done anything like that. So I appreciate that partnership. And then, yeah, the Palma team at Hunter with the 2 lifts there. And it's, at the beginning, it's the guest experience and how can we make it better, smoother, and keep folks coming back year after year. And then at the end, it's like you got a lot of folks in the room, from folks in the corporate office, from folks on our partnerships, but it's certainly a collaborative effort. And I'm super excited to have teams like that, because that just creates better ideas that come from ultimately like the initial feeling on the ground.
So Trent, if I'm counting right, you've overseen the installation of 7 new chairlifts, or we'll talk about the Otis sort of new used in a little bit, but just in the past 3-4 years. So you've had some seasons with lots of lifts, and you've never had the privilege of just putting in 1 lift. It's either been 0 or a bunch. And so comparing, say, last off season to the one before and the one before where you put on all those lifts at Jack Frost Big Boulder, I mean, how much does it make you appreciate a sort of quote normal summer when you compare it to these very intense operation summers where you have all these extra people on site and all these lifts going in and all these changes, and you simultaneously have to explain to the skiers what that means and making sure these things get done on time? I mean, what's that kind of taught you, that whole immersive experience?
Yeah, I think, like as the great Ron Burgundy would say, like that escalated quickly. Like I went from 0, being part of 0 construction teams on lifts, and in my past I kind of worked conceptually on lifts and pro formas and things like that. But going from like 0 to then 5, I think I got like a lifetime worth of experience in one summer, and maybe some more gray hairs, maybe less hairs on my head because of it. But it was a great experience, and, was able to take that experience into the 2 lifts at Hunter. So, like, I don't know, I feel like I've worked for this, Vail Resorts for 20 years, and like taking a year off isn't like kind of a funny concept to me, because we're always thinking about something. Even in the year after the lift upgrade, I jumped from Jack Frost Big Boulder to Hunter and learned a whole new ski resort. So I think, it's not a lift. I mean, maybe the summer might be quote unquote normal, but I mean, there's normal is always doing something and getting into something.
So Trent, talking to folks who ski at Hunter regularly, I heard something that frankly I've never heard about Hunter before, and that is that the lift line management was quite good. And that's nothing really in particular against you or Vail or Peak Resorts or anyone else. It's just that Hunter is sort of like New York City personified in a ski resort. It's just a little bit chaotic. So the good queue management, I'm going to start with you. Is that a Trent thing? Is that a Vail thing? Is it kind of both? Is it just you had new lifts and it spread people out better? So what's behind that, and how deliberate has that been of a focus of yours?
Yeah, it's a combination of a couple things. It's the new lift infrastructure certainly helps. But again, we listen to our guests. Like I found myself, I like to go to the front of the line at the Flyer at 8:30 on a Saturday, and I think you get a lot of feedback, positive, constructive. And last year, myself, the lift maintenance senior manager, lift operations manager, mountain manager, so we're all out there, and we kept hearing it's like, well, where are these people at? Like, how can you handle the lines better? Like this, this merging and we're talking to people that merge into the Holland Tunnel or go over the GW bridge into the city. And it's take no prisoners in that traffic, in that world of traffic. So I think what we did is we all put our heads together and we're super feedback focused and then put a new plan out there. And I'm happy to say that the Flyer, I loved this year, we had some maze coordinators out there that were firm yet fair, and got our guests, through the queue. And it was one of my favorite things to go look up the Flyer line. And it's six people, six more people. And it worked a lot better. And I think they appreciated that. But I think, maybe the Holland Tunnel needs a master of ceremonies out there getting folks in, but it certainly worked at Hunter.
Absolutely. Hey, I'll tell you what, congestion pricing actually worked great to clear out the Holland Tunnel traffic. We were going to Newark the other day from Brooklyn, which is always a nightmare. And we were through into New Jersey in 15 minutes. I couldn't believe it. So, but we'll see if that stands. But definitely, we'll keep the good line management on Hunter. So, kudos to you and your team. Not an easy thing to do. It's been said that New York City is ungovernable, but the same could be said of Hunter Mountain. But you're doing a good job with the lines. Let me ask you a lift nerd question here, Trent. So, I've noticed this at both Jack Frost and Hunter. They both used to have lift nomenclature with A, B, C, D, E, F. As Vail has replaced those lifts, it's given them names instead. So at Jack Frost, you went to Tobyhanna, Pocono, and Paradise. At Hunter, the B was always Broadway, but then you named the new lift Otis rather than the letter. What's behind that? Does Vail just not like the lettering system? Are you trying to honor local cultures? What's behind this switch, or is there nothing behind it and I'm just overthinking it?
No, I mean, there's certainly something behind it, and it's not it's not like Vail is saying we don't like letters, and I think it's it's the Hunter team, it's the Jack Frost Big Boulder team, thinking about how do we personalize the resort. So thinking of JFBB or Jack Frost Big Boulder, it was we named those lifts on the Jack Frost side after rivers, creeks, and streams in the Poconos, and we felt that water was really important to what we do. And then over on the Big Boulder side, we named it after lakes, ponds, and kind of went that direction. So the harmony or the blue heron over there we're paying homage to the area and really integrating with the elements of nature. Now at Hunter, we had kind of a series of lifts that, and I don't know if anybody knows this, but the lifts were started to get named after railways. So the Catterskill Flyer was one of the rail names. The Northern Express is a rail name. So, we kind of already started to get away from that in the Slutsky era. And then we felt like the best way to honor our traditions was to go forward with that. And Broadway was already a railway and kind of made it easy to call it the Broadway Express and still, honor it. And then when we got over to what used to be E-Lift, I had the opportunity to name that lift. One thing I've done on all 7 lift upgrades is put a poll out to our employees on what they think the name should be. And one of our employees kind of threw out Otis because all your lifts are named after trains anyway. So that particular railway went from the valley floor in the Hudson Valley and directly up to the Catskill Mountain House on top of the escarpment in the Catskills. So that lift, the Otis Elevating Railway, felt like it was a perfect segue into what we named that lift. So who knows if we'll stay on the train theme? It seems like I hope to get the opportunity to name another lift after a train, but I'm glad that we did. I'm glad we did what we did. I think it honors the past.
That's really cool, Trent. And I want to underscore that that is local, and you've been involved in this process twice, and can confirm that because we too often get in the narrative of things being run out of Colorado, but that's really neat that you were able to work with your employees and the longtime folks there to do that. And frankly, I'm glad. I cannot keep the letters straight. I've skied a Hunter more times than I can count. I people say DF, or I have to look at the map. I have no idea what they're talking about. And I know all the lifts and I know where they are and I know where they go, but unless I'm looking at the map, I cannot keep the letters straight. So I don't know. Probably some of the locals like it that way because that's their thing. All right, let's talk about Otis. This was your other upgrade. This was the Broadway lift, but as we all know, you don't just take a lift, pick it up, and move it. So break this down for us, Trent. Why did you decide to move the old Broadway over to Hunter East? How did you decide on that positioning? Just give us the full story of how that all went.
Yeah, certainly. So E-Lift, which used to be a fixed grip, 2-passenger 1968 haul. When we took that out this summer and saw the opportunity to move what was the Broadway fixed grip 4 over to Hunter East and give it a new name, like we jumped at that opportunity. And like the first thing I'll say about that pod and that lift is like it's been a huge unlock for that, like Hunter East and progressive skiing and riding. Okay. And to answer your question about its position, because the old E-Lift was closer to the base lodge, it was actually the first lift that you hit if you're coming from the base lodge onto the slopes. Mm-hmm. So I think what we saw with guests is like, well, there's a lift, like go up the lift. And these folks maybe had never skied before, and then their first run ever is a Hunter Blue. And I think that didn't create the best guest experience. And I'm sure if you're Warren Miller, it created great, television or movie making, but we wanted to make sure that our guest could, build confidence. And that's why we kind of pushed that lift farther east to the other side of 20th century of the sea lift. The idea is now that especially if you're in a lesson and talking to some instructors, this is certainly what they're doing, is you start on the carpet and you establish your skills there. Then you build confidence on sea lift. And then if you're feeling like sporty, now you can go up to the Otis lift. And there's a lot of confidence building blue terrain up there. That terrain over at Hunter East is like world class if you are a beginner. To the question you had earlier, it really just spreads everybody out. If you keep that pot of terrain, Hunter East skiers over on Hunter East, they can learn and grow, and then kind of like a dealer's choice on the main mountain.
So it all makes sense when you're there, but looking on the trail map, it's kind of a smattering or a mess of lifts. So you still have this H lift. This is a super old double chair, far lookers left. This dates to 1972, Heron Poma double. I understand that you still spun that lift quite a bit this year. Do you see a long-term future still for that lift?
I think in the immediate, certainly. In long term, we always have like kind of pie in the sky ideas, but for H lift, we ran it on the weekends, we ran it on holidays, and what I'd say about that terrain is it's like for the folks that come from, and primarily we serve New York City, and they're all trying to learn how to ski, or a lot of them are trying to learn how to ski at first, and so you can't get enough like uphill access on that beginner side. And what I'd say about H lift is it accesses a trail called Boston Road, and it's a big, wide, mellow trail that like you can get your turns in pretty quick and build your skills there. So I want to continue to run that lift.
So as far as Otis Quad goes, Trent, it was the old B lift. You moved it over. I have this conversation quite a bit with operators where you move a lift and it's perceived as a used lift, but you almost do so much to it that it's almost a new lift. I don't know how much you did here. Well, I do because we've talked about it, but for the listeners, can you lay this out? Yes, Otis is the old B lift, but what parts of it did you reuse? What did you rebuild, replace, modernize?
It's exactly as you said. Like when the helicopter came this off season, we, carefully removed that lift, and the towers and the cross arms are the same. But we took the opportunity when the cross arms were down to refurbish and replace a lot of the shift trains there, and then we got a new haul rope for it as well. So and some of our systems are mechanical, and then the new lift houses. So you're basically looking at it says like a used lift is one way to put it, but I think it's been, there's been a lot of new bells and whistles on it, and it's been as reliable, if more than ever before. And yeah, we got a new paint job too, so it's looking nice and shiny on Hunter East as you're driving into the resort.
So the new lift is a little shorter than the old lift. So Otis is 2,148 feet and B was 2,642 feet. Gives you, like 400 feet. So they give you a nice little boneyard to take care of that.
Yeah, and a little bit of a buffer, and I would say, yeah, it's having that lift be slightly, smaller, quote unquote, but like I think it really fits in well over there. And as folks are riding it, I think the secret's starting to get out of like how good that terrain can be, and like even on our busiest days, like what you can do up there.
All right, Trent, tell us about the Poma at the top of Hunter East, because this has been on the trail map for years and years and years. And I asked the Vail Resorts rep several years ago when the last time it ran, and I think they gave me a number around 2011 or 2012. So I'm assuming you want to get that thing going at some point, and it happens to be right next to the Otis unload. So what's the story with that Poma?
Yeah, I think this story is like we're looking at it, and we're going to certainly evaluate it because it's so close to the top of the Otis lift, and really it's almost like a seamless traverse over there now versus the old E lift was a little bit more of a slog. A lot of that terrain over there, and I get a lot of feedback from our competition race teams over there about that. And we've been talking about the best way to get our comp teams more training and better pitch. I don't think there's anything in the immediate future with that PAMA, and I think like what long term, I think there's much more opportunity today, and I think I'm starting to zoom in on that side of the mountain than I did before, but nothing like I would say immediate or to a point where we're going to replace that palm anytime this summer.
Does it run?
It does not run right now, so I think it's going to need some refurbishment in order to get to that point. But like what I would say is that like there's some really good terrain over there, and my eyes are wide open. And our overarching goal is to include as much terrain as possible from all the eras, and that terrain over there, once activated, I'm sure, because it's all black diamond terrain up there too. So maybe that's like the next step for Otis riders that go from beginner to intermediate, and then they can test their luck on the Palma Trail or the Palma, and then go up the Hemlocks and the Upper Highlands.
Hey, I know a lot of you come to this podcast to hear from the best minds in skiing, but what if you want to bring one of these great leaders into your operation to run your mountain team? Well, I want to introduce you to the folks at Profile Search International. They are the ski industry talent acquisition experts and are the only executive search and recruitment firm in the world that is 100% focused on the ski industry. Profile Search has used their intimate understanding of skiing and related industries and of available candidates worldwide to place hundreds of transformational leaders at the best and most progressive ski areas over the past 30 years. Profile Search has offices in the US and Canada, and they can find and negotiate with the right leaders for your team. Reach out to them directly at profilesearch.com or contact them by email or phone, or send me a note and I will connect you directly with this expert team. All right, back to Hunter. So Trent, I mentioned earlier, we're talking about New York skiing and like wild New York ski culture, and we both come from the Midwest. and we come from sort of opposing parts of the Midwest. So tell us about where you grew up and grew up skiing.
Yeah, so I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and we skied at a little mountain called Mad River Mountain. It actually wasn't little for Ohio. It was like the highest elevation in the state. But I got into skiing through like ski club bus trips, and you paid some like nominal fee to get a bus ride and after school program and a little taste of like adult life without parents at the ski resort. So I did that throughout middle school and high school, and yeah, and I enjoyed going there and some other mountains in Ohio. And yeah, it started in Ohio, and it started smaller mountains, but then going to college, the ski clubs there were a little bit more organized and could get far to farther places. So like you could go to like Snowshoe in West Virginia or Seven Springs in Pennsylvania, all the way to like our teams would do this like massive trip to Colorado each year. And that's kind of when I started to get an idea of like what Rocky Mountain skiing looked like.
Yeah, for those not familiar with Midwest skiing, it's a lot like Hunter. It's very chaotic. There's a lot going on. There's small hills, but there's a ton of lifts and just people going everywhere. What do you remember about skiing at Mad River, Ohio as a kid, and how that attracted you to the sport long term? And how was that something you wanted to be part of growing up in Ohio, where there's just that one ski area outside of Columbus, and it's not necessarily this alpine ski culture, but it is something to do?
What I'd say about that side of things is I got bitten by like I was a skier at first, and that was great and all, and that was good. Like me and my dad and my brother would go up to Mad River, so like the memories that came from that would be kind of like what I got hooked on initially. But then like in 8th grade, I didn't back up, like I didn't know much about like DIN settings on skis, and in the Midwest, like terrain parks are king, right? Like you gotta have like an elevated terrain park experience. But I started to hit these terrain parks, and like I would hit these jumps, and I would double eject out of my skis every time I landed, like literally every time. Like, this is awful. And of course I didn't know anything about the DIN or the binding itself. So I'm like, well, forget this. I'm going to go better or worse. I'm going to ratchet myself to this piece of equipment. That's where I got into snowboarding in, I believe it was like 8th grade. And then from there, like the kind of feeling that you get when you snowboard, I don't care if it's Midwest, Mid-Atlantic, Rockies. For me, it was certainly addictive. And like, I never thought I could do this ever, like as a job or anything like that. But I always wanted to ski and ride.
So you ended up at Vail Resorts, which, it doesn't sound like you deliberately set out to have a career in skiing, but that is in fact what happened. So how did you find yourself there? And, you have a really interesting Vail Resorts story, Trent. And I know we've talked about this a number of times offline, but how did you end up there, and what did the company look like when you got there?
Yeah. The last year I was in the Ohio University Ski Club, we went to Vail, and then I was kind of sitting there on top of the back bowls, and I was like, I've never seen anything like this in my life. So like, I'm gonna do a season there. And I was getting my business degree from Ohio U, and I was like, well, I'll drive across the country, I'll get a job for a season, and then I'll go back and do the real world thing. And now that I think about that from like a lot of my peers, like we all have like a similar story. But yeah, I was able to get a job in like the accounting department because I had this business degree. And, for me, I was like, oh, like I get to tell my parents, like, I'm not a ski bum. I'm like a professional that happens to ski. And so like that's how I got into the more like the Rockies and working for Vail Resorts. Like it was a different time. Like I think I'm starting to date myself a little bit, but like it was before Rob Katz was the CEO, and it was Adam Aaron at the time, and the corporate offices were in Avon and in Keystone. So like it was a good blend of like, like kind of working at this like progressive business career. And then, I was able to ski at night because I started at Keystone, and I was thinking of my Midwest times, and I'm like, you know what? Like in the Midwest, like you only ski at night. Like that's when the skiing gets good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to apply that same logic to Keystone. And then I was quickly reminded that it gets a lot colder in the Rockies and it's a lot drier in the Rockies. But nonetheless, like I had the ability to get out there like 5-6 days a week, even after the old 9 to 5.
Yeah, it's so funny you said that, Trent, because when I started skiing as a teenager in Michigan, I it was a couple years before I realized people skied during the day. I thought it was just a night thing and didn't realize that. I guess I kind of did that you could do it out west, but didn't realize that in the Midwest people ski during the day. So um, thank goodness you can because otherwise Hunter would have a hard time. So Trent, you're out there and it's for Robcat CEO, so I'm assuming Vail owned Breck, Keystone, Vail, Beaver Creek, maybe Heavenly by the time you got there. Then the Epic Pass comes along. I mean, just what did you think of that idea when you first heard it as a lower level employee who's a skier and just likes skiing? And this idea of taking the season pass from this $1,800 thing at one mountain to 500 and whatever dollars it was to ski at all of Vail mountains. I mean, did you think this was just a quirk? Did you think this was revolutionary? Did you think like this is neat? I'll take advantage of it before it goes away. I mean, take us into this and what it was like to be there on the ground as just someone who's part of this machine as it really gets rolling.
Yeah, so when I got to Keystone, it was obviously I think the Epic Pass came out in 08. So this was like 05. And some of the buddies that I had from ski club in Ohio, they moved to Denver and they all, they kind of joined like what I would say like is the initial pass competition, which was like they had the Colorado Pass at Vail Resorts, which was you could ski Keystone, A Basin, and Breckenridge, and then you got 10 days at Vail and Beaver Creek. Yeah. And then there was another pass for the Intra West resorts called, I think it was like the Rocky Mountain Super Pass. But the thing was, like, it was kind of like a secret menu item at the time. Like, you had to come to Colorado to get it. And, like, you had to be there in person. So, like, but it was huge amongst the team or the folks in Denver. And I wasn't, like, on like the ground floor. I was there when it happened with the Epic Pass, but it certainly made sense to kind of like take the lid off of just that like Colorado geography and say like, how about this unlimited pass and this subscription based product that that's good for anybody. And like you said, like the price to ski at Vail and Beaver Creek is like $1,800 then. And then that suddenly went like, it was more than cut in half. Mm-hmm. And like that really like kind of changed the game there and started to flip the model from more like heavily focused on day tickets to then like, no, this pass and, this subscription product is good for me. But seeing the Colorado Pass, like I could kind of see that it could be great, but like, I don't think anybody saw like how like transformative the Epic Pass was going to be. I think we had some ideas though.
So as you mentioned, launched in 2008, and this thing started to move really quickly. 2010, Vail buys North Star. 2012 shocks everyone by buying Afton Alps in Minnesota and Mount Brighton in Michigan. Bought Kirkwood in 2012, Park City in 2013. Well, I think Canyons in 2013, Park City in 2014. Put them together. Australia, Whistler in 2016. 2017 buys Stowe. You're here during all of this, and from discussions we've had before, you were part of helping this Epic Path's growth. So take us into that era of Vail Resorts growth and how you were involved with the Epic Pass during that transformative period.
So I was a part of the accounting group at first, but then moved into kind of like more of like a consulting role. We call that internal audit here, but you go and, check out the property. So as the company was growing, like North Star and Kirkwood, we got to go there and really like check out all the processes, making sure that as our company was growing, we were also scaling. And, for me, I got a ton of experience, going to Tahoe and like watching the urban proximity resorts come to fruition. But it was it was pretty wild. Like there wasn't a year that we weren't doing some sort of acquisition and, being a part of some of the integration teams, not all of them, but like to watch this company grow as fast and as it did and going from like, what was it, like 5 resorts when I started and now it's like 42. It almost seemed like at first, like when North Star was purchased in 2010, it was like, oh my gosh, like it was like crazy. And then like you get to like the Peak Resorts acquisition in like 2019, it's like 17 resorts. And it was like, okay, it's 17 resorts and we'll get this. And just like we did before, but it's like, it's part of the evolution is how we've gone. And then like how the past connects people from the local areas to their local mountains. And then like they can have a home mountain, but they can also fly to a destination trip and be a part of that experience. It's been awesome to see throughout the years. It was definitely challenging at the time, but it's super rewarding at that same time to watch the past like grow with the portfolio.
So it's an interesting convergence of your worlds here because you're part of Vail Resorts and you've been part of Vail Resorts for years and years. They buy Peak Resorts in 2019, include 17 skiers, including Mad River, Ohio. So I imagine you still have your roots back in Columbus area. I imagine you still have a lot of friends and family there. What was the reaction from them? And what did you tell them about the Epic Pass and the opportunities that now opened up for them? And did they get it?
I mean, I think I used to say something to like my friends, like when I was in Colorado, I was like, first off, we'll never, ever buy Mad River Mountain. It's a small resort outside of Columbus, Ohio. It's not even that big of a city. And like, I was like, if that ever happens, I will put down my 10 key or whatever accountants had. And like, I'm going to pick up an application and I'm going to apply for that job.
Okay.
And of course it was never going to happen. So like, I was just all tongue in cheek. And then, 2019 rolls around and I'm sitting in finance at Breckenridge at the time. And this job or this acquisition happens. And I'm like, Peak Resorts. I didn't even know Mad River was a part of Peak Resorts. And then I saw the list of like resorts that came with it. And that was one of them. And growing up skiing there. And I was like, well, I did say that, but I didn't actually mean it. But then I started to talk to some of my mentors and, folks ask me often, like I came up through a finance and accounting path, but I also got like a chance to sit next to some of the more transformative mountain leaders ever, right? Like you've got Pat Campbell and Mike Gore and Jeff Buckheister and John Bueller, like all these folks that were ski area icons in my eyes. And I got to sit next to them and learn a lot about the business, through them. So I ended up talking to John Bueller and I was like, I kind of want to get into operations, but I don't know. I kind of like this whole finance thing too. And he's like, well, if you want to be a GM at one of these, like these mountains, why don't you go over there? And like, you're from there anyway. So why don't you shoot your shot? And so I did. And thankfully got the job and got to, have a homecoming back at the place that I learned how to ski. And once I got back, it was, like it felt like home. And the resort was the Midwest, but I'm looking at it through a completely different lens now. And it was an awesome thing. But like to tell you that was a thing that I was ever thinking about, I would be lying right to your face.
What's the difference between growing up at a place, and I'd imagine when you were a kid, Mad River Mountain seemed huge, and then coming back there after years in Colorado and having that context, and having a different role, right? Not being there to enjoy it necessarily, but to make sure everyone else enjoys it. What was that like, just to come back to a place that means so much to you, to do it in your hometown, and to have this special role as a representative and ambassador, really, of this company that's new in town?
Yeah, I'd say that it was like, for me, it was personal. Like growing up skiing there, creating all those memories, and then working for, much bigger mountains, and then coming back, like I felt that it was kind of twofold. Like I could learn, and I knew a lot about the business side of things. And I'd say I knew a little bit about every department, being in the role that I was in. And then that team, they taught me a ton about like just grooming. I went out and made snow, like all the mountain ops related things. And in return, like I was kind of showing them like, well, here's what it's going to look like to be part of this network, and here's all the benefits that come with it. So, I think that passion, and then be able to learn from that great group of people there. And like I was home, right? So we would, like we would talk like Ohio State Buckeyes football, and like we were connected, and we're able to, like I said, that's how I kind of like dug in as far as mountain operations go and learned a ton, but then also brought a ton with me. This little mountain becoming a Vail resort.
So you're definitely in Buckeye country, and congratulations, Trent, on your national championship. Mad River is one of the few rail resorts I've never been to, not for any particular reason other than that it's just not super convenient for me to get to it from here. But I was thinking when I go there, I should probably rock a Michigan hoodie. You think that'd go well for me?
Yeah, I mean, like maybe for about like 3 minutes.
And I see we both resisted wearing our gear today, which would have been fun. But
right.
Anyway, I could talk about Mad River and Ohio State versus Michigan all day, but let's go back to Hunter. And you mentioned being around all these great leaders, and you took over for a really legendary fellow at Hunter in Russ Colleton, and he was a leader there for decades and decades. So, talk about Russ and. Granted, you had also been a couple decades deep in the ski industry when you arrived, so we'll give that context. But what was it like working with him? What did you learn from Russ about Hunter and its particular culture and just leadership in general?
What I'd say about Russ and coming to the resort, first as like a fan and then ultimately getting the job here, like I can't think of a better person to be connected with, or I consider him a mentor. And 44 years in the ski industry, and like just a legend, right? And I still get a chance to talk to him. I talk to him, if not weekly, multiple times a week, and he's just a great resource and a wealth of knowledge when it comes to, Hunter certainly, but then the ski industry in general. Like he's like, it's certainly one of the if not the best highlight of being the GM here, is to have access to that. And yeah, we talk often about like even like strategy on snowmaking and things that we used to do, or like, but all while trying to like put my own fingerprints on it and make it better than it was in the prior. But he's been instrumental, and still, like right now he's like on his boat in the Keys and probably watching the webcams, and I'm sure he'll listen to the pod on this one. And like, yeah, he's just been an awesome partner there. And he's like one of those people that I can talk to and talk about anything, because I think he can empathize with what I'm going through, good, bad, or indifferent, and provide a unique perspective. And so many times, like he was the architect of the Broadway Express. So like I definitely picked his brain there, but like, yeah, everything else too.
So you're taking over for a legend, and Trent, I've been to hundreds of ski areas, and I think that if I had to list what I think are the hardest mountains to run as a general manager, I think Hunter would be right near the top for a lot of reasons. One is just the clientele, which is just, insanely energetic New Yorkers and New Jersey people. And I mean that with much love, having lived here for 23 years myself. Another is the topography. It's a weird mountain. It was blown with dynamite. The runs don't necessarily follow the fall line, meaning that nature's not going to put the snow where you want it. You have to put it there yourself. It's a very high volume place. The terrain is really pinched as far as where you have to funnel everyone through. So as you're talking to Russ and taking over this job, I mean, well, I guess what made you want such a challenging job, and how did Russ help you understand, okay, this is essentially what Hunter is and must be, and this is how you can succeed at doing that?
Yeah, to kind of answer that last part first, I think he would always say, like, here's what Hunter can be,
Yeah.
or here's a suggestion of what it can be. And I think if we say what must be true, like, I don't think Hunter would exist in the way that it does now. Like for going from the Slutskys at first and under Rush's leadership a little bit later, like, this place is unique. And I think there's a couple people that say it, but like, I think it's Frank Sinatra or Johnny Drama from Entourage. And it's like, if you can ski Hunter, like, you can ski anywhere. And I think that comes with its challenges and the off-piste terrain and the double fall lines. But I think it garners like a clientele that creates like an energy here. And me coming into it, like, I want to be a part of that. They're like, well, like our New York brethren are like, I wouldn't say tough customers, but high expectations, right? Like, high expectations, and like, and nothing to say that that's like bad or good. It's just high. And I want to be a part of that. And then the mountain itself and putting this place together and watching the guest face, like when you're able to execute and meet the expectations at a high level, like I would say about our guests is that they're fair. They're fair, and they'll say things are going well when they're going well, and when they're not, they're not. And that's because they're so connected, and it's so personal. This place is unique. It's like no place I've ever seen. It's got the richest history of any place that I've ever been at. And yeah, I feel an obligation to all of that.
Trent, I was really surprised, and maybe you were as well. I think from a distance, most folks would probably assume Hunter is primarily a day trip area, but I've been really shocked, and I learned this a long time ago, with how many people ski there every day. Like, it has a really, like, if you line up for that Catskill Flyer in the morning, you feel like you're getting on the tram at Jackson Hole on a powder day. I mean, there's a rush when they drop that rope because people they want that first tracks. As you look at that really loyal Hunter crowd, and then you add Vail in, and Vail brings a whole other world with that Epic Pass, right? And now folks can take that and then go to Whistler, and then go to Vail, and go to Park City. Are you finding those cultures meshing? Are you finding the Hunter diehards? Are they saying, "Oh, I can use my season pass and go have a week in Utah"? Is that changing the culture a little bit and evolving for the better there? Is that working?
I'd say at first, when the Epic Pass was announced, I think there was the general excitement, and people can now say like, well, my Hunter Pass is now good. Or if they had like a Peak Pass before, like now it's good, like out West. And there's certainly an opportunity there. And so there's a lot of excitement up front. And then I don't think it's necessarily a fair evaluation. But then COVID-19 happened, right? And like we were navigating COVID for the first year, 2, even 3 in as Vail Resorts at Hunter. So I think with that, like there was some stuff that we had to do in order to, keep the mountain or everybody as safe as possible. And, going through to like 22-23 season, like I think that was like our first, like, okay, like we're in the company, like we can start doing like what I've seen at so many of the other acquisitions that I've been a part of is like, improving key areas and start to drive and improve the guest experience. And so going from there, like I think now the guests are seeing with the Broadway Express, with the snowmaking upgrades, with, like it's not as like marquee, but like we're putting a new roof on the lodge and these things are all like people are looking up and like, okay, now I'm starting to see the benefit and we're starting to execute at an even higher level. So I think there might have been like a little bit of a low point, but I'd say that's more environmentally related than like how we do things long term as a resort. And I think they're seeing that now, or at least I hope they're seeing that now, because I think we've gone, even in my time here, a long way pretty quick.
And you're finding those Hunter diehards, they like that Stowe access, they like that Vail access.
Yeah, I talk to those folks that line up at 8:30 at the Flyer, like they go rip the mountain apart and then they go sit at the front, like in front of the windows, and they, bask in the sun and kind of do some people watching all day. So I go down there and I talk to the folks there and they're like, well, I'm going to Park City, or, like this is what's been great, or this is where you need to get your stuff together, Trent. And like, so you get a whole like kind of like a feedback row of sorts. But one of them is like they love going abroad as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, especially from the East Coast. It's not that much farther than going out west. A couple more things for you here, Trent. This got lost a little bit, I feel like, in Hunter's history because of when it happened. So in 2018, you had that massive expansion onto Hunter North, and you got actually your other six-pack lift, which makes for the three of the two that we've talked about in that one. And that happened the year before Vail bought it. So Peak Resorts did it and they got their glory for a year, but then it became all about Vail and became all about COVID. So that was a big transformative expansion. Peak had actually intended eventually to put in a new base lodge down there. What is Vail's thinking around that? Because that's a whole big chunk of land that you could potentially probably be sending a lot more people to. And, obviously Hunter gets very congested at certain points in the current base area. So is there more potential over at the base of Hunter North to build out more facilities? And do you intend to do that?
There's certainly potential over at Hunter North. I would say that like Hunter North is maybe, I don't know when this thing is going to air, but it's kind of like the best kept secret and maybe all of skiing. And if I told you that you could ski right on to a bunch of great terrain on our busiest holiday weekend, and you would look at me and you'd say, "You're crazy, it's Hunter," like I would retort and say that, like, you need to go check it out. And the Northern Express and the Zephyr Express are like just that side of the mountain. There's so much potential, and we've got a parking lot over there, and it doesn't have a lot of guest amenities, and it's kind of like skiing at its rawest. And what I'd say about like future expansions or lodges or upgrades, like it's something that we've certainly thought about, but I think we got to figure out like what it is first. And like I'll go like maybe an anecdote is like some of the most fun I've ever had skiing is sitting in the parking lot at Eight Basin with my friends, like grilling hot dogs, right? Like that was like that meant nothing. That meant like no lodges, no like upscale facilities. It was our car and like beating down the door of the parking lot at 6 a.m. So that's on like one end of the spectrum is like, what do we have there for the guests that are like, that they want to avoid the crowds and all the way up to like, yeah, we could put a facility there or a building there. But I think my opinion is like, I think we're going to try some other things and maybe at a smaller scale. And this year we ran first tracks out of there. And so like a half an hour before you could get some hot laps in on Hunter North, and then you could ski over to the main mountain when it opened at 8:30. And it's just kind of like things that we're trying, kind of like more, guest like surprise and delights at first, but yeah, like maybe all the way to building a lodge over there one day. We're set up for long-term success there, but I think there's a long time to get from where we're at now to ultimately like something like that.
So looking at that expansion, Trent, I got really excited when Peak put out the new trail map in 2018 because it had a bunch of glades on it. There's green glades and balsam bypasses looking at an old trail map that are between Northern Express and Rips Return, something called Westkill Woods between Rips Return and Rusk Road. This predates you. Maybe you don't know the answer, but why did these glades go on the map and then come off and disappear and they've never been there again? Did they glade those trails and they just didn't get enough natural snow to label them and they're still open, or did they intend to and they just didn't get to it and now they're not gladed? What's the story with those weird disappearing glades?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily like familiar in like all the details of like how it came to fruition, but
Yeah.
I would say that at least in my time here, like there just has not been a significant enough natural snowfall that like unlocks those glades. I've never seen it. I think there's a really big storm in 23 in the spring that you could probably ski it then. But yeah, I think that it's more of a combination. Like we are the snowmaking capital of the world, and we're so like that's so critical to who we are. But we don't get as much natural snow as like Vermont or New Hampshire, for instance. So I think when the getting's good, it's really good. It just doesn't happen that often.
Was Hunter North Hunter's last potential expansion? It's easy to look off the top of the Catskill Flyer, and there's that awesome bowl that just the zip lines go out into it, and I don't think the zip lines are active, but it looks like awesome ski terrain. From my understanding, that's protected land and cannot be developed. Is there any potential expansion at Hunter?
I think there is. We have a 2000 master plan. I think is the last time that we did it. And there's like some terrain expansion to the west of Hunter West in that particular master plan. And I think if you listen to the Hunter historians, there was like some trail infrastructure to connect Hunter East to the Hunter Main mountain without actually going to the bottom of the lift. And those are a couple of things that are happening now. But what I would say is that like our focus is like I would say more terrain inclusion and thinking about the best way to get Annapurna and Westway and the Highlands and the Hemlocks back online using technology or operational insight to get to where we need to go long term.
All right, Trent. Last thing for you here today. I've kept you all morning, and I don't want to be too greedy with your time here, but Epic Pass. Essentially, the Epic Local Pass is Hunter's season pass, and that's the one tier down from the full Epic. Hunter's a very busy place. Seems to me you could black out holidays on Epic Local, and probably I don't think anyone would blink, especially with Wyndham Mountain Club next door charging $2,000 for a season pass. What's the thinking behind Hunter being unlimited on Epic Local? Is that something that you discuss every year? You're committed to that long term? Is it working for you? What's your whole thinking behind Epic Local and Hunter?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything in the immediate plans to kind of change where we're at on the tiers of the pass offerings. What I would say is that, like, I'll go back to the lift upgrades and the snowmaking upgrades. Like, we have an opportunity to spread folks out more. And you just heard my diatribe on Hunter North and being the best kept secret in all of skiing. And, I think that there's a lot more opportunity to spread our guests out. There's plenty of terrain up there for it. And I think the optics that Hunter brings is that there's a lot of people at the same time at the same place. So I think I look at that as a challenge of like, okay, well, now Otis exists, and anybody that goes over to Otis is like, oh, did you hear about that Otis? And it's got like 5-6 blue trails. And like I'm looking up and there's opportunity for black trails. And if you go over to North, like North is like, I don't think it's still been fully unlocked. So I think I'd look at that as a challenge for myself and our team in order to create the best experience possible. And that said, I think we're in the right tier of pass. I think we're in the right tier of Epic Local Pass. And yeah, like the only thing I would wish is that like we can get more of our folks to get into those Epic Day Pass products and try us out, and then realize like all the good things that are happening up here, and kind of make skiing the love of their life like I had mine, and yeah, see where it takes you. You might be a finance guy that ends up being a GM someday.
All right, Trent, listen, I appreciate you sticking with me through all this. I could talk Hunter Mountain all day long. I know no matter how long I keep you, it won't be long enough for Hunter faithful. They could listen to this for 6 hours, because this is a mountain that generates tremendous passion, tremendous interest, tremendous loyalty from a lot of people who've been skiing it for a very long time. So good job up there. Good job on the interview. I appreciate you. Appreciate the relationship. Thank you so much today, Trent.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. Appreciate the time.
That's Trent Poole, Vice President and General Manager of Hunter Mountain, New York. That was incredible, Trent. Thank you so much for that. Hunter Mountain Nation, I want to hear from you, because I know you have something to say after listening to that. How do I know? Because you always have something to say about everything. I mean that with much love, Hunter Nation. Thank you all for listening. Lots and lots of pods on the calendar as we roll into 2025. Pop over to stormskiing.com and subscribe to the Storm Skiing newsletter. And also please follow the Storm on X, Instagram, and YouTube at Storm Ski Journal. Until next time, stay well, stay safe. I'm Stuart Winchester, and I'll talk to you again very soon.
The Storm Skiing Podcast is a Quicksilver Films production.